Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Billion Dollar Banker podcast, the show built for high achievers by high achievers. This is your space if you're hungry to reach new heights, sharpen your skills, gain insight from the best in class across business, real estate, and beyond. Every episode delivers proven strategies, real world stories, and actionable steps you can apply immediately to maximize your growth, expand your influence, and unlock your full potential. But here's the thing, this podcast isn't just content, it's community, and we want you to be a part of it. If you get value from today's conversation, do us a favor, subscribe, like, and drop a comment wherever you're listening. Share this episode with someone in your circle who's chasing greatness just like you. And if you're ready to go a little bit deeper and connect with us in our community, join us on social media or join our exclusive sales training community on school.com, where high achievers like you come together to learn, level up, and lead. Because here on the Billion Dollar Banker podcast, we don't just talk about success, we equip you to go out and make it happen. I'm so excited to have you here today, John. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
I know we're going to run through this quick. I'm excited for our listeners to learn from you. You
Yeah.
are what I would say the definition of a high achiever. Jonathan Spears here today for our audience. John has always really considered himself a high achiever and someone who's really unwilling to settle for status quo, which I love. His exceptional drive was evident as a teenager when he enrolled in college before he could actually legally drive. He desired to develop a greater understanding of the business side of real estate profession, and Jonathan opted to focus his studies on Florida State University on business and finance, graduating with a degree in business administration at just 19 years old. Gosh, that's the time most people are starting school, maybe a year before that. Coupled with his natural entrepreneurial spirit, John discovered an opportunity to parlay his degree with his desire to launch a career in real estate when he started off working in the foreclosure resale business in his hometown in Destin, Florida. And then in 2015, John transitioned to the luxury residential sales market. He utilized his go-getter attitude and superior knowledge in the Northwest Florida real estate market, and he rapidly developed a stronghold on the luxury real estate market in that area. With business booming after only 2 short years, Jonathan began assembling a talented team of his own. Thus, the Spears Group was formed. And since then, the Spears Group has funded and closed over $2.5 billion in sales and named the number one large team at Compass and recognized as the number one team in Northwest Florida. Absolutely amazing, John. Incredible results.
I love it. It's funny. The high achiever in me wants to correct. I think my first college degree I got at 17, and I got my second one at 19. So I was driven from the jump. And it's funny because a lot of people who listen to this podcast can relate. I think at that space and time, like you want to do everything. Like I'm probably self-diagnosed ADHD, and if I'm not multitasking, I just get bored to death. But it's fun to get to do what I love and get to lean into the opportunity to build amazing relationships.
Yeah, I mean, it's so incredible. I'll just start by asking, what prompted you to start school so early and get ahead of the game?
Yeah, I think at that age, I was walking through the financial crisis in Florida. So for most of you guys who've walked through 2008, 2009, it was chaotic. And I was watching literally everybody around me lose everything. And I'm 13, 14, 15, like I'm young, I'm not exposed to the market personally, but that was traumatic. And I just knew I'm never going to be, bogged down. Like I want to get ahead. I want to get a jump on life. And I believe that my time was everything. And so I was trying to buy my time back, especially early years of grinding to be able to get ahead of the game in whatever career field I chose.
So inspirational. I have so many friends now, and my stepson's going to college this year. So I just think about, kids getting started and how to get ahead in the future. And so it's just really extremely impressive. When you led with that, when we first met, I was blown away. But John, today we're going to have a jam-packed episode. I know we're going to move quickly here, but for our audience, I'm really excited for you guys to learn from John and what he's built. It's their results are incredible. You've built obviously one of the most recognized brands in Florida luxury real estate. What first drew you into real estate, and did you always know that was the path for you?
So I got my real estate license in typical overachiever fashion the day I turned 18. So that was my goal. I spent my whole 18th birthday working on it. And I had sort of planned in the months leading up to that that's what I wanted to do. My driver was different because in business school, they taught us that real estate agents were like the dirt on the bottom of your shoe. And I literally, I had a professor who called the profession, worse than shoe sales. And in that same session, there was an Ernst & Young CPA firm that came in and told us that we could make up to $30,000 a year if we went to Atlanta after we got our first degree and got to work for Ernst & Young. And I kept thinking to myself, like, that sounds terrible. What am I going to do with $30,000 a year? So I looked at real estate as a no ceiling way of expressing the inner entrepreneur that I have. And the only ceiling that existed was me. And I still feel that way about this business. I think as an entrepreneur, you're your biggest limitation. And that's what drove me to get into real estate originally.
That's incredible. And yeah, I think a lot of high achievers, a lot of people in our audience really started in their entrepreneurial journey with some of that same, fundamental philosophies behind it. Like, hey, I don't want someone to put a ceiling on me or tell me what I'm worth. John, when we think about business in general and real estate, I think that, yeah, it does kind of have that perception, like you said before, because a lot of people aren't really treating real estate as a business, right? They're kind of treating it as a side hustle or a hobby. You've clearly built a real business. What are the biggest differences in your mindset and operations from what you've built between the hobbyist agent and,
Yeah.
a true business owner? What are the differences?
Yeah, I think the biggest way to think about our industry in general is that most of the 2 million plus licensees here in the United States, they wake up every day and they treat the fact that they've got a real estate license as if they just had a license to the country club. And so they'll show up casually and, hit balls with the boys or drink some bourbon, between course or par 1 through 9. And if you were to shift your mindset to say, okay, I've got this license, but I need to build up to the amateur tournament. And for the way for me to dominate and win an amateur tournament or the tournament just in my local club is I got to get disciplined. And I need to figure out what are the movements that I could do every single day to get just a little bit better, just 1% better. And that's sort of how I approach the business. My mindset is, how do I dial in my schedule? How can I create repetition and consistency in results? So instead of just having that one big sale that happened that one time during the best year ever, how can I have the biggest sale of the year every single year? What am I doing that's going to both attract that business and then proactively put myself in the position to transact on that business?
Yeah, and look, clearly you're doing it, right? You wouldn't be the number one team in Northwest Florida for Compass, the number one large team. It's incredible. You've built a group, you've scaled, you've grown. What systems are non-negotiables that you have in your business in order to keep it running?
That's a great question because I've been in the business for 16 years. I'm 33 today, started the day I turned 18. What's fascinating is how I've had to adapt the different iterations of what Spears Group was or who Jonathan Spears was versus who it is and who I am today. And the biggest thing that I'd say in 2025 that all of us can adopt is technology to help keep us on track. And so for us, we were able to build out an AI-based software called MyOps. And my COO and I founded this business together because we could not find an off-the-shelf tool to help keep the processes of Spears Group aligned with our vision and goals. And so for processes in general, that's where we lean heavily is to technology to help us stay on track and to help the 25 plus team members that we operate stay on track.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, I think people are scratching the surface with AI, maybe using it to rewrite an email or answer a question that Google would normally answer. But the people that are using it at its full capacity are building out AI engines that are going to help them do the specifics of what they want in their business. In using that, how are you measuring success just beyond sales volume? Like, what KPIs or benchmarks do you track to know your business health?
Yeah, it's so great. I think the biggest thing for us when we look at KPIs is I'm always trying to figure out what areas of market share I have and how I can continue to grow in those areas. So one issue that all of us as entrepreneurs face is we want to do everything. So when I started out as a single agent, like I was such a micromanager and I literally tried to put the signs in the yard. And the problem with that is it doesn't give us free time to focus on the things that we're good at and that we know create those dollar productive activities. So KPI for me is always market share. I look up and down the market and I try to figure out, okay, do I have one of our agents that's number one in this specific area? And then I try to teach agents, and this is something to definitely listen up to. Don't cast your net too wide when you're focusing on where you're selling. So somebody may say, hey, Jonathan, I know you sell the Florida Panhandle. Can you handle a property for me here? And I think a lot of agents go, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity. I want to go after this. But we hire the best doctors in the world, the best attorneys who are getting paid unbelievable sums of money because they're extreme specialists in one area. But as real estate agents, we want to be experts at everything. And so for market share, if you guys are looking to permeate a specific part of the market, for me, I went from foreclosures to selling and building the most expensive inventory of my market. It's because I was able to gravitate to a specific segment and I just doubled down on it. And that's typically 100 addresses or less. So I teach my team, like, carve out your favorite neighborhoods or carve out some of your favorite streets and obsess about who owns there, who's transacting, and why. Why did that happen? And that's something that technology will never tell you in full. You'll be able to be that voice of the market, or as I like to say, the mayor of the market.
Yeah, the mayor of the market, right? Your local town kind of celebrity, so to speak. Well, what great advice, because I think a lot of people don't really know where to focus, right? They're just kind of a little bit all over the place with their thought process, and really narrowing in on what you need to do is critical. What advice would you give to an agent who wants to make the leap from being a solo producer to really building a real business?
Yeah, I would really encourage an audit. So the first thing that we do at Spears Group, and in every year we've pretty much have a come to center moment, and we figure out what do we need to do to adapt to achieve our goals at the next level. And my good friend Larry Kendall, who wrote the book Ninja Selling, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, he talks about how leaders clarify vision. And so if you want to lead other people, you need to have a very clear vision of what that looks like so that they can adopt that vision and you run after that together.
Yeah, really. Someone said on the podcast the other day about, like, you got to create the river first before you start looking at the streams, right? You have to really hone in on what you want to create, get that working. I always like the analogy of, like, you're building a machine, right? You got to get that machine up and running well. You got to identify your KPIs. You got to treat it like a business. I think there was someone recently who I follow who was talking about exactly this, that I think agents' income altogether went up about 4% this year, but 62% of agents made $10,000 or less. And it shows you that the overwhelming majority, yeah, don't really still, right? Even with the agent reduction that we saw over the last couple of years, and specifically also in the loan officer space, there's a lot of people that are still not succeeding. They're treating this as a part-time hobby, don't know what to do, don't have any guidance. Obviously, your team philosophy is helping your group grow. Tell me about, the Spears Group and how it's become the number one team in Northwest Florida. Like, what's the philosophy when it comes to leading a team? What do you do to, for your people that you bring on?
One thing that I learned more in the latter parts of my career than the earlier parts is that the best teams are the ones that aren't just solar systems revolving around a top producer. And so for years and years and years, I operated as, a solar system where I was the sun. And where I shifted SG, mostly, post-COVID, was really to focus on organization. And if you think about the most valuable things on the planet, like what separates a Walmart from a mom and pop grocery store, what allowed that scale, what allowed that growth, were proven systems and processes that created value for their clients. And so for us at Spears Group, people always say, like, how do you manage 25 agents? And I always respond and I say, look, our systems and processes manage agents because our systems and processes are proven and it allows them to grow to scale. And so we've got agents that are in their very first year doing as much as 10 to 15 million in sales volume. And then we have seasoned agents that they're getting past that 30, 40, $50 million mark in annual sales volume. And where I get super excited as a leader is watching people not only hit their goals, but exceeding their goals, because they're able to follow and create processes for themselves that they can repeat on a daily basis.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point you bring up, the whole solar system, like the main producer, and then all the people that kind of support that main producer versus developing individual programs and operational procedure, I guess, for each one of the agents on your team. It's interesting, and it's really something for people to think about. I would imagine that would be a big piece to think about when you are considering building a team. I have a big philosophy around, the further that you're going to go further together than on your own. I think that one of the hardest things for top producers to do is to also be top leaders.
Yep.
How did you make that transition from being someone who's a high achiever, loves real estate, to being a leader? Like what new skill sets did that require for you?
Oh my gosh, that's probably the most tremendous leap. We need to do a whole nother podcast on this because I can't sum it up in 30 seconds or less. But I think the biggest thing is shifting your focus and awareness that instead of operating, for people, you're operating from a place that you believe will be better for your people. And so most of us as real estate agents are inherent people pleasers. Actually, some of the best listing agents that I know aren't people pleasers, but for the most part, realtors in general, they want to please their clients. They want to make sure that they're going out of their way and they do all the things. And I think when we start to lead people, we start to lead them because we want their affection or their attention. And if you're listening to this, you could probably relate either maybe to yourself or to somebody in your community. But I see a lot of agents that have big entourages, and they just love to be surrounded by an entourage. And most of the time, the entourage is an effect of them feeding certain things, whether they're feeding leads or they're feeding them with socializing and like a club atmosphere. For me, I realized that my attention was on figuring out how do I increase not only our company's bottom line, but my agent's bottom line. And I just started building from there. And I think the thing that we found, to be ideal is in that solar system, we want to be gravity. We want to be support for a planet. We don't want to tell you that you can't grow, to a certain size. We want to be that force that holds you up. And then the systems and processes keep you in the solar system, literally. And so if you're creating a team or if you're operating a team, I would highly recommend go to MyOps, MYOPS.ai. Our entire system that we built Spears Group off of, we poured it into this AI technology. We've not released it to the public yet, but we will be very soon, likely this fall. And that is our gravity. That's how we operate. And our goal is to continue to, and we've shifted our recruiting mindset because our goal is to continue to bring people into that system that can grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned AI, so I'm just going to literally jump right into it. Obviously every industry is talking about AI right now, and everyone kind of sees a new outcome, I think, or a different outcome of what AI is going to do. I think we're extremely fortunate to be the first generation ever to be able to tap into this. How do you see AI helping agents treat their business more like a business? How can agents use this to be effective?
I think the biggest thing is when you're investing in software, specifically into an AI, into a ChatGPT, whatever that is, your CRM, you're investing into a system and process that's proven. And so for us, when we looked at AI, there's nothing off the shelf that really worked for our operations. And I think most agents out there get fearful of like, is AI going to take my job? Or am I even going to be relevant with all of this new technology, this superhuman technology that can tell my client anything? And I think the advice I would give to anybody listening is get super curious, because what AI can do for you is it can give you your time back. And that's where we focus, is in how can we leverage technology to make more of the things that robots can't do for us, which is a human connection. And so if you're out there and you're worried about your job being taken, focus on what you can do that a robot can't. which is you can love on your client, you can create a real human connection. And those are the things that we want to be freed up to do more of. Our mission statement is build lifelong relationships and create raving fans, which has absolutely nothing to do with selling real estate and everything to do with being at the core relationship builders and folks that want to be excellent in everything we do.
Yeah, we have to obviously really be thoughtful about like what is our differentiator? How are we going to use the tool? How are we going to staying curious? The fact that you said that is like the probably the biggest repeated thing I hear on this podcast from guests is you have to
Yeah.
make that time for that deep work. You have to be interested in learning. And I don't think that's ever been more important than it is today. And I think stressing it and having more people come on and talk about what they're doing in this space is hopefully will encourage people to not just use this like Google, to really be thoughtful and learn and stay curious, listen to podcasts, do deep research, and use AI to help you figure out how to use AI, right? It could even help you with that. Are there specific areas, marketing, client communication, lead conversion, data analysis, where you think AI will have its biggest impact?
Yeah, I was actually just listening to another podcast this weekend, and it said the most profitable forms of AI for businesses are backend operations. And so, where AI is really incredible right now is data retrieval, management, and interpretation. And so, for us real estate agents, we have so much data at our fingertips that you have companies like Zillow and some of these big brokerage houses that war over it. And we don't even realize it because we're so busy just trying to manage our relationships or get to our next sale that we don't organize our data. And I think that's probably the biggest fallacy in our business. And it's why my co-founder and I created MyOps, was so that we had a place to put that data and we gave AI access to interpret it, which ultimately saves us time. And for example, where I think AI is great is I can hop into my AI and it can tell me things as simple as, here's the access instructions for 123 A Street, which that avoids me having to pick up the phone, call my assistant. It avoids an extra task on her plate so she can go out and do the dollar productive things that allow us to get to a sale, like following up with our listings or following up with agents that we show properties to. It can also go in and get documents for me at a moment's notice. So if I need a survey and I'm on site on the fly, like I'm not scrolling through Google Docs trying to get that. If I've got data on my agents that I need analyzed, hey, so and so wants a new commission split. Well, how much have they produced? How much of their lead sources have come from Spears Group? How much have they brought in on their own? The AI can tell me that in an instant. So it doesn't require some deep research or, hey, let me get back to you. I've got this information in my pocket. And ultimately, the goal is to save time for us to do more with that extra time.
Mm-hmm. And when you're saying that, I'm thinking about I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give to agents that are out there today or anyone that's in business when using AI is to become a master at like delegating, right? Because I think of AI as like this new assistant you have in your life, right? And if you traditionally there are people that are great producers, amazing business owners, and horrible delegators, right? They don't know really where to start, and people might feel a bit overwhelmed. Like this is a lot. It is really a lot. This is a lot of it. It's a lot to learn, and it's a lot of information. But I think if little by little you keep listening, just like you're doing, Jonathan, and for our audience, you're gonna pick up. You're not gonna boil the ocean. I always say that you're not gonna learn everything about AI, but you're gonna learn how to use it. Now, if people go to MyOps.ai today, tell us like what are they gonna see? How could they jump in there and start using it?
Yeah, I love it. So the first thing they're going to see is our mission, but the biggest thing that they can do is they can sign up so they'll be the first to know about our rolling release. We're only going to open it up to a handful of teams at a time. And I think the biggest thing that MyOps is going to do, not only for our industry, but for agents, businesses in general, is it's going to put everything in one spot. Where we got really thrown off at Spears Group is we had all of our information in like 3 or 4 different platforms. And there was probably 5 more on top of that. But the core 4 platforms, it still required me to get in and out of different softwares. And I did not have an AI capability there. And so we want to make sure that we get this in the hands of as many people as possible, but we're going to be very thoughtful in how we do it. And anybody that inquires on that site, those emails go directly to me and my co-founder. So we're looking forward to connecting directly with you guys and being an amazing support.
Awesome. Is there a cost for this right now?
There is not at the
Okay.
moment. There will be once we release the technology, there will be a monthly cost associated with it.
Or maybe we could get the billion dollar banker listeners a promo code to get a little
Yeah,
discount if they
let's
sign
do
up.
it.
Um,
Let's do it. And we'll have a follow-up podcast maybe with you, Nicole, once we have everything released.
and start demoing it. Yeah, I think that's a big. I didn't realize up until maybe a few months ago that a lot of people just go into Chat GPT and they start asking it questions or they want to use it for something. But I didn't realize actually that it's almost like an app store that in there, if you search, there are all these different AI tools within Chat GPT. And I think
Yes.
one of the things people are noticing is like, hey, now I have 7 AI apps that I'm using, or chats that I'm using to help me. I want this all in one spot, and so I think it's an incredible idea and concept. And I feel like a lot of people aren't sure where to turn. I think we saw this with content creation when it first started coming out, and it's still obviously very relevant, but people are like, yeah, I know I need to do it, but I don't know how. And, how do I tripods and cameras? And it just seemed too overwhelming for people. So, to the audience, I'd say like pick a couple places to really be listening and learning to, try not to, there's so much information out there. It does overwhelm you a little bit. Pick a couple places where you really want to listen and learn. And I think this will really help you to grow. And check out these AI apps. Check out MyOps.ai. See if it's something you like. Reach out to John if you have questions. To be able to know kind of, you could reach out to an individual and ask some questions about their AI app versus like, hey, learn more and chat with our associate, from another country. Really different, right? So for me, I would definitely take you up on that offer if I was a listener trying to learn more. I want to. Yeah, and I
Oh,
want to talk to you a little bit about business leadership and branding. I mean, you run one of the top luxury teams in the country, or right for Compass. Is that correct? I mean, that's are you
in
ta
general,
yeah,
in general.
I mean, that's incredible. So, what's your philosophy when it comes to kind of building a high performance team like that? I mean, it's an incredible achievement. Are you guys meeting consistently? Are you on top? Is the accountability really high? How do you keep everybody really motivated to hit it every day?
No, absolutely. Not only do we meet consistently, we're typically a once a week team meeting, but I think the biggest thing as a leader is you have to identify roles and responsibilities that you expect out of an ideal agent. And then you've got to go out and recruit that ideal agent. And so most people end up recruiting just for production or just for one specific thing. But I think as you lead, culture has to be at the forefront of that, and understanding that there could be the right seat for somebody, but the wrong person. And then you may have the right person, but you may put them in the wrong seat. So I think the biggest thing as a leader that I've learned is that there's variations of both, and our ability to sift that out on the front end can save a lot of time. But it's also understanding like what's best for an individual and how do we put them into that orbit of success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I like the fact that you're like kind of reverse engineering it. You're not just like, oh, somebody's doing a lot of business, let me reach out to them. You're kind of reverse engineering, saying what are the qualities? Someone said to me the other day, and it really resonated with me. If you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one.
Yeah,
And I think you really getting specific about everything, right? What market you're farming in and growing your business, what agent is an ideal agent for the Spears Group. Really critical to identify that in the beginning before you get started with building anything.
absolutely.
Speaking about Florida specifically, obviously Florida's seen a lot of growth over the last several years. What
Yeah.
do you think, the luxury market in Florida particularly is going to be looking like in the next 2 to 3 years?
I think that there's an oversupply of inventory from a macro standpoint in just about, you know, every major market in Florida. But what we've noticed is that quality is still being absorbed at the highest levels. We're
Mm.
seeing record setting sales and price points in areas of the market that have moved in a direction that I don't know that any of us thought was possible, mainly because you're being opened up to a diverse group of buyers, but also post COVID, the scarcity on quality is so high. I was doing some math. There was a $130+ million sale in Indian Creek in Miami, and the cost per foot on that sale was about half the cost per foot of a sale that we just had in our market, for a 50-foot wide by 100-foot deep lot. And so it's just really fascinating to see some of these areas of growth that that we didn't expect. And a lot of it has to do just with scarcity.
How is new construction kind of backfilling that kind of challenge? Are you seeing some price reductions in that space? Are you seeing a lot of new construction popping up in your local market?
So definitely we are, but I think the new construction is actually the part of the oversupply.
Hmm.
So what you had is people who bought B and C lots. So the A lots are already taken. The B, C lots are um, more abundant, and developers of yesterday created product for yesterday that's just now hitting the market today. And that's put a constraint on not only price points, but just inventory in general. And then that A grade market, when that inventory does come available, you're seeing it absorb quickly, and you're seeing it absorb at very high price points. So, like this summer, for example, our market was up 13% year over year from 2024, where most of the summer markets, and you could just Google like Wall Street Journal summer markets, most summer markets were significantly down year over year. And for us, I think having quality inventory that came up at the right place, right time is important. But also seeing the continued strength that Florida has in terms of its appeal and growing demographic.
Mm. Yeah, I think, we're other than New Jersey, I think it sounds like everybody's having a big kind of inventory challenge where there's just a lot of oversupply right now. And it's interesting that you say new construction's, fueling some of that. It's important. We're in a buyer's market, right? In many senses because of that. In most markets across the country, and specifically Florida. When you think about just, buyers in general right now, any insight for them on, what to be expecting over the next few months? If someone's sitting on the fence thinking about buying, anything specific about your local market, and a lot of people might not know where exactly you are in Northwest Florida. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we're located in what I like to call the Hamptons of the South. So if you Google the Hamptons of the South, 30A is a 28-mile stretch of beach that is almost due south of Nashville. So we're in a different time zone than the rest of Florida. We're in central time zone, and it really has become an enclave for wealthy homeowners that influx from the major southeastern cities across the U.S. pre-COVID and then post-COVID, really all over the U.S. internationally. But as I look at like the trajectory of where I think the market's going, and I just kind of analyze our market in general, I think that if we can get a little bit of a rate adjustment this year, and as our market shifts to more of a full-time demographic, which right now it's primarily a second home demographic, you'll see a lot of explosion in growth.
Awesome. Good insight. So a lot from, did you say south? Did you say southwest? You're seeing people migrate there? Is that what you said?
Really all over the southern United States, but it
Okay.
is exploded. Like we used to be a Dallas, Nashville, Atlanta, Birmingham, New
Mhm.
Orleans drive
Okay.
to market. Now it's like some of my biggest clients are from Palo Alto, California, and parts of the Northeast. And
Hmm.
so as 30A's brand has continued to explode, and sort of this narrative of the Hamptons of the South has continued to grow,
Mm.
uh, white sand, emerald green water, perfect beach in America has become very, very popular.
Sounds beautiful. Sounds absolutely beautiful. All right, I know we're short on time here, and I want to hit you with some rapid fire questions. But I'll first say, I think Jonathan, absolutely so impressive. There's something to be said about, the speed in which you get to your destination. I always say, like, if you're not getting the results you're looking for in your life, it's because you're either not doing enough of what needs to get done, or you're not doing it the right way. You obviously had such an incredible advantage starting so early, and I hope if there's anyone that's younger demographic, that's something that I think a lot of us should be thinking about now. What college is very important. I think, getting ready in the professional world is just as important. There's so many opportunities we have to get started now, at any age, really, to get into business, and especially with this online world we're living in. So let's hit you with some high achiever edition rapid fire questions. Give me one book every entrepreneur or high performer should read.
Who not how?
Who,
Who
not
not?
how.
It's the
Okay.
very. I can't tell you the author. Just Google who not how.
Awesome. Biggest risk you've ever taken in business?
Ooh, in business. I would say branching out on my own. Going from being on a team with somebody else where leads were abundant and I had all these tailwinds. I went straight into a headwind, uprooted my tree, planted it elsewhere. And a lot of that had to do with proving to myself that I had what it takes.
Love that. First hour of your day, is it a structured routine or a flexible flow?
Very structured. I wake up, I read my Bible, I take some quiet time, and then I hit my workout immediately. And if my kids are up, I try to do it with them.
Okay, that's interesting. That someone said the other day, they don't say work-life balance, they say work-life harmony. Like it's not, it's kind of like, how do you make it all flow together? So it sounds like you're doing that. What's your favorite spot in Florida to recharge outside of work?
I think my favorite spot in Florida outside of work is an area called Alice Beach, Alysbeach. The architecture is unbelievable. It's probably one of the most interesting architectural gems in the US. So Google it, you won't be disappointed.
Wow, very interesting. All right, here's a kind of high achiever question to end with. If you lost it all tomorrow, everything's
Yeah.
gone. What would the first thing you would do to rebuild be?
I'd focus on my network. So I'd identify my goals, but here's the thing: your network is everything. That's why the human relationships, the things that technology will never take away from you, your character, your personality, the secret sauce is always you. So all of these brands that we can work for, these different areas of success that you can leverage, just leverage that to put yourself in front of somebody because that is always going to be your best opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. There was this book that I read a long time ago called The One Thing. I don't know if you heard about it, and you were supposed to define kind of the one thing. If you were to focus on one thing, what would it be? And I landed on relationships, network. I mean, that's everything. So we're definitely got a lot of synergies here, John. I'm just so impressed by you. I'm so thankful that you joined and shared your insight with our listeners today. Thank you. I know you got an awesome listing appointment to jump to now, so appreciate you joining. Guys, all of John's information will be in the description notes. If you want to reach out to him directly, ask him about AI, ask him about the Florida market, feel free to do so. He'd be happy to help. And John, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
We'll see you soon.